Good evening and welcome back to Heart and Hand Extra, your second free show of the week. I am your host, Adam Thornton, and tonight's show will look back on Thursday night's excellent 2-0 win against Brondby and also look ahead to this weekend's match with St Mirren in the league. Joining me for this one is James Forrest. James, how are you?
Not too bad, Adam. Happy to be talking about a good result and a good performance that came along with it last night. So, yes, rather that than another discussion on disappointments, at least.
Yeah, I'm interested to get your take because it was a good result, and it's funny how, stating the obvious, results and goals cloud opinion. For me, I think we probably played better in patches against Hearts. We were certainly, I think the manager used the term, more electric in the first 45, 60 minutes. But coming down to that last kick of the ball, it's funny how a goal and obviously dropping points changes your opinion, and there's revisionism that, maybe we weren't as good as this or we weren't as good as that. Compared to Brondby, I think we were more efficient and clinical. We got the goals at the big moments of the game. But overall, I think the last two performances have been very encouraging.
Yeah, I think if you look at the amount of minutes where we've been playing well over those two games, it's certainly going in the right direction from where it was. There's still work that needs done in certain areas of the field, which we'll talk about as time goes on, but I think in the main it's perfectly acceptable to look at this and say, all right, we're seeing more encouraging things, particularly from some players, as well as the overall shape of the team. I think we're maybe starting to see get an idea in terms of how we can use certain players best, which definitely helps in terms of how a team looks. And any kind of resultant performance like that in Europe is always something that should be celebrated. Even though the opposition on this occasion probably weren't at the same level as what we're maybe used to in group stages. But again, that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, let's come on to that. I think you're right. I think the highlight is getting what was a fairly comfortable 2-0 lead. I know we'll come on to some chances, but Brondby only had a couple of chances, but I didn't really feel like we were in any danger once we got the second goal, and then certainly once we got into the kind of 50 odd minutes of the second half. I thought we managed the game quite well. But let's start from the start, James. Always a good place to go. Let's review it with the benefit of hindsight. I know that listeners will have heard from both of us over on Patreon, your chief exec show, and then obviously the post-match press conferences with myself and David. But let's do it with the benefit of a night's sleep. Two changes to the team: Stephen Davis and Kamara Roof coming back in place of Scott Wright and the suspended Glenn Kamara. A lot of chat this season and indeed pre-game, James, that Stephen Davis and John Lundstrom couldn't or shouldn't play together in the same midfield. How did you think that pairing went in particular? Because they swapped about a little bit. Davis was deeper for a little bit, Lundstrom was on the left, and then they switched throughout. But how do you think that went for them?
That was really interesting that Gerrard had made that decision, because I think a lot of people would have had the assumption that if the two of them were going to play together, that Davis would play in that role in the centre and Lundstrom would be kind of in a wider area. But it says a lot for Lundstrom that actually he felt that he wanted to rotate that a bit, and sometimes Lundstrom would play that anchor, and I think the idea was whomever's not doing that role, they find themselves more on the left hand side and provide a cover for Barisic. I thought Davis was fine. Coming back in, I don't think he was a standout. I think Lundstrom again just is a calming influence in that position. I think he does a lot of things very well in that role, and I don't think it's the answer in terms of midfield. I think the sooner you're able to bring Glenn Kamara back into that position, the better. But I actually thought the way that Gerrard managed those two players in terms of how they did that rotation, that was exactly the right thing to do. It was perfectly sensible and meant that we didn't have that issue where Lundstrom's performance dipped, because he's clearly now a lot more comfortable in his role as well as in the shirt. he's settled in now and is aware that he can perform as well as what he has done for us lately. So yes, a gamble, but it paid off, because I think a lot of people would have said, put Bakuna in there and keep Lundstram in that kind of central role. But I think, in benefit of hindsight now, made sense for Davis to come back in, and that rotation worked.
I think it's interesting the point that you raised there. The rotation of Davis over the last couple of weeks has been very, very well, and again, the last minute goal, but that's not necessarily something that would have been Davis' fault. He was on the pitch when that happened, but the rotation for him, he was looking very, very jaded. Couple of games in there. I think the Leon one and whatever it was round about Leon, he did look a little bit below par. So bringing Lundstram in and having that option there, and he's proved himself to be much more than an option. But I'm glad we got that performance last night from both of them, because if you're taking Davis, Lundstram and Kamara as essentially being two of the midfield at any point, the three of them going into two spots, having a perception that Davis and Lundstram can't play together kind of means that Kamara needs to play every game. So again, you're able to rotate in there, and what you've touched on there was getting more comfortable in the jersey. I think is a really key point, because I think everyone, myself included, thought he needs to be a number 6 now, given how well he's played. But just a little inkling that, well, if he's more confident in the team, it's less impact for him to have to move up into one of those other two midfield positions and still be able to perform, because he's more comfortable, as you said, but he's also got the confidence. So in essence, we're kind of getting that flexibility that we thought we were getting with the signing. It's just maybe 3 months later than we'd hoped.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us assumed that Lundstram would play a different role from this one. Yep. Partly because I don't think anyone imagined the idea of there being a player that could possibly do the Davis role other than Stephen Davis. But I think, whether intentional or whether by happenstance, Lundstram has now got that role, and it's his role for the time being. There's nothing that's happened to suggest that should change at all. We know that we can do that, and we have a big squad, and rotation is going to be a thing over the season. But if you've got a fully fit squad, you're playing your best 11 right now, Lundstram absolutely plays that.
Absolutely, 100%. The other one that we mentioned there in terms of players coming in was obviously Kemar Roof. I think in a big game such as this, a must-win game, you have to have Kemar Roof in the team for me, if fit. Taken right out of the team for Roof is a bit of a no-brainer in terms of what they can deliver right now at their stage in their career. But it did leave us a little bit short of pace in the starting lineup. That was something that we called out pre-game. Maybe more pace in a offensive capacity, James, rather than being concerned about Brondby defensively. I'm not sure that was ever going to be the case. The style of play that they have, I don't think they were ever going to swamp us in midfield and get behind us, if you like. I did think the front three were a little slow to start the game, certainly the first 15 minutes or so before the goal. But how do you think Morelos, Roof and Hadji did together?
Well, see, actually, I think it should be a different question. I think it's more about how Morelos and Roof did and how Hadji and Aribo did, because I'm noticing a bit of a partnership down that right hand side between Hadji and Aribo in terms of what they do, because both guys who want to cut inside from the right, but one will kind of go a bit further wide and one will be a bit more central. So all of a sudden you have a kind of flat line of 4 attackers suddenly. I think that's key to what Aribo does, and we will talk, of course, about him in terms of that. And I think Hadji, I think he maybe benefited from that a wee bit in terms of kind of having some thinking going that way. It also helps in terms of what Tav was doing at right back, in terms of that, which I think was better. Roof and Morelos, they are two guys who really, I think, should be vying for the same position in terms of that main attacker. I know that Roof can sometimes find himself out wider because he has the versatility to do so, but I think he is best as that kind of main attacking player. But because Roof is so good and should absolutely start in these kind of games, then it's natural for him to play there. The lack of pace is a problem. I think we are very much needing Ryan Kent back as soon as possible to really help with that, because that's what he's going to bring in the main, and it gives us a kind of more dynamic attack as a result. I think the kind of build-up play aspect of our front line was absolutely fine. Again, the finishing was maybe more the issue, but yeah, for me the partnership of Roof and Morelos together, just without that additional bit of pace in there to help with that, it does lack something, as good as they both are as individuals.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a strange one, because you want to get both of them in the team, but you probably do lose a little bit of link-up play with them, and it's probably Kent that glues that together in terms of his ability to carry the ball and link between the two. Aribo does it as well, and he did very, very well, we have to say. In the first hour or so, I thought he was the only one looking to take the fight to Brondby in the early stages, but then when everyone else came onto a game, he was still a standout, and we'll come on and talk about a couple of incidents featuring him. It looks like Leon Balogun picked up an injury, James, hamstring, we think. That's a shame. He's had an excellent 6 weeks or so ever since that performance in the Celtic game, hasn't he? He's obviously, we're a Highlander down just now anyway, so his contribution has probably been magnified, but if that is a hamstring injury that requires a couple of weeks out, that's it's not a great prospect at all for us.
It's really not, because we're really finding ourselves short at the back, and it is the most precarious position right now at centre back. He has been, as you say, really, really good since he's kind of come in, and we've not really seen him have a long run of games for us up to now, because there's usually been this rotation between him and Helander to partner Goldson. But I think Balogun, during this stretch of games from when Helander's been out, I think Balogun's looked the more standout defender of the two, and he makes an excellent contribution in the game in terms of the opening goal. He's been great, so really hope that he's back sooner rather than later. If it's a case that he is going to be missing, then it'd be really interesting in terms of our next game to see who does partner Goldson at the back, because there is one natural centre back that we can pick. There is one defender who can play at centre back, who he came on in this game and was fine, but I don't think he was overly tested really by the time he'd entered the field. If Bassey was to start on Sunday ahead of Jack Simpson, I think that tells us everything we need to know about Simpson's future. If Gerrard doesn't trust him to start a game like that, then there is no future for Simpson at Rangers. I think a lot of fans have made up their mind on that already, but I think that would tell us exactly what the manager thinks about Simpson's prospects if he's not considered someone that can start that game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think obviously the two games that Bassey has started at centre back recently, the two games he's been involved in, was obviously Sparta, and then the game tonight, and obviously Jack Simpson isn't eligible for the European squad. So I think you're right. Sunday comes and if Balogun isn't there and Simpson still isn't playing, I think it shows that Bassey has jumped ahead of him. What did you make of Brondby then, James? They had a couple of chances within the first minute of each half that their striker Ura should have done better with. I think the angles were probably quite tight on them, but he should have done better with. And then obviously they had a big miss, a sitter, if you like, round about the hour mark. Pavlovic, is it Pavlovic? Is that his name? Andrea Pavlovic scooped over the bar after probably one of the few times they actually managed to get down the sides and in behind us. What did you think of them in general? I know you spoke to one of their fans for your European Hangover show over on our Patreon site. Were there any surprises based on what you'd managed to find out?
The front line was a bit different from what myself and Casper had discussed. Pavlovic coming in was maybe a bit of a surprise to partner Ura, because normally they would go with Headland as someone who was maybe a kind of sort of quicker, smaller guy to really do a lot of the kind of the typical number 10 in a strike partnership type role to try and help set up Ura, who's clearly their main attacking threat. But I think Pavlovic was there possibly to, he's maybe a slightly kind of bigger guy, so they're maybe looking for a bit more physicality and kind of doing it that way. But it seemed to kind of go against what their attacking style was, and it was a lineup with more us in mind than them doing what they would want to do.
It's funny you say that, actually, because that in a roundabout way is essentially what the Brondby manager said in the press conference afterwards. He was asked actually if he had one eye on the Copenhagen game at the weekend with the team that he picked, and he said absolutely not. We know Rangers' strengths, and we'll come on to examples of these in a minute. He said we know they're very, very good from set pieces, and they're very strong at getting down the sides and getting crosses into the box. So it was interesting that you said that, because that kind of marries up to what he said then, rather than going with the kind of smaller, more technical players. He's maybe went for a bit more physicality, whether that's in the defending aspect or whether it's to try and rough up our centre halves. I'm not so sure, but that certainly ties into what the manager said after the game.
Yeah, it is interesting that, and I think credit to us for the fact that they're having to kind of think in that way. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but in terms of teams that we've played in the group stages of the Europa League ever since Steven Gerrard's come in, I think Brondby are probably the worst that we've come up against in terms of games that we've seen so far. They only had those couple of chances. You think of the one in the first half, that I think that was the one that Pavlovic had hit over the bar. It was cut back from the right hand side, and then there was that chance right at the start of the second half, gifted to Ura by Barisic, but they weren't able to capitalise on that. Other than that, I just think that we controlled the game very well in the first half, and it was fine in the second half. Brøndby didn't really do anything to cause us any real problems, I don't think. And I think when you've got this sort of middle of the group stage double header that you always seem to get, actually having them as that team that we have for that actually plays quite nicely in terms of momentum going into the last two games. I don't hold a huge amount of fear in terms of going there and trying to get some sort of result based on what we saw in this 90 minutes from a Brøndby perspective.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. In terms of the goals, then I mentioned the set pieces, and the goal that we get on 17 minutes is from a corner. Broadly similar setup to the goals we've scored against Celtic in the recent past, James. The game at Parkhead in March, Balogun got the flick on this time to Morelos at the back post, and if you watch this one again, Morelos makes that same move again, dropping off his marker and trying to hit the back post for this one, but instead of knocking it on, Balogun just batters it into the net instead. It's such a powerful header and a really, really positive start to the game, getting that early goal.
Yeah, it's really, really important, and it's you cannot say enough for how good that ball in is. Any corner like that is good, but in the circumstances with Tav getting pelted by all sorts from the away fans right beforehand, why people choose to act in that way, I just don't get. I think there was a lot of kind of sort of trying to act the hard man from quite a few of their fans that travelled over, and in the end just made themselves look quite silly and stupid in the end. But it's a great ball in from Tav. Great header. The anticipation to just get in that position, bang, right in. Love goals like that. Love seeing that. And it ties into your conversation around Tav, and it's part of how I think he played a whole lot better in this game, because not only was he doing putting in deliveries like that from set pieces, which he's really good at, but I think in terms of what he wanted to do in an attacking sense, he didn't just keep himself out in the wide areas the whole time. He was almost kind of making inverted runs as well, coming more into the centre. Looking, I think he had a shot which he would maybe, with a better connection, could have had a better result off the back of it. But he looked in terms of his intent from an attacking point of view, it looked a lot better from him. So, I am. There is an obvious man of the match candidate in terms of this game, but I think a big shout out for Tav as well in terms of the effort that he put into the game last night.
And both Tavernier and who I assume you think the man of the match is, Joe Aribo, combined very well for the second goal. Nice little triangle down the side to get some space, and Aribo flights over a cross which Morelos really should bury for his 100th goal. Saved by the keeper, and Kamar Roof stabs it in. Obviously it's a VAR incident, James, one of our first ones I think at Ibrox. Where I was sitting last night, we've got a pretty clear view across the line. I thought Roof was touch and go in terms of being offside, but probably offside overall, given that there were no men on the posts. But such a benefit of VAR that they can get these borderline factual decisions sorted out within a minute or two. I think, James, the referee didn't really make it clear what he was doing for me. I think he had an issue with his watch at some point and was swapping it around, but he didn't really make it clear what he was waiting for the check, which probably aided the confusion. But still, great to get the goal, be 2-0 up in the first half hour. I think the only other time we've managed that was Ross County, and they got a goal back before half time.
Yeah, the ball in from Aribo's great. You're right. He for me was absolutely the man of the match for not only what he was going to do and bring the ball forward, but I think it's one of the best games he's had in terms of trying to win the ball back. So it was a more well-rounded midfield performance from him, which, whenever he's looked at his best, it's usually been more in an attack. But actually, there was a bit more about what he was doing as a midfielder that looked a lot better here for me. It's a great ball in. Morelos, he should score that. He heads it in the one area where the keeper can make a save. If he heads it anywhere else, it's going in. And that pressure, which I think you can see, it's like kind of, he's putting that on himself a wee bit in terms of, he knows he should be doing better. He knows he should be scoring more goals than what he has done. Heading in a chance like that goes a long way toward dispelling that for him. Roof just has this ability to find himself in the right place for these situations in the box. That's why I think he's the best attacker right now, because of this ability that he has. I see the linesman put his flag up. I'm assuming that's it. But of course, VAR plays a part. You're right. I don't know what was going on with the referee. Was kind of sort of checking. I think he needed a replacement with his watch or something like that. I thought that's all that was when he went over to the side. But of course, you see the announcement coming up on the screen. The longer that goes on, the more hopeful you are that something might get overturned, and then you kind of get to celebrate that again. Slightly surreal experience being in the stadium for that, but looking back in pictures and whatnot, it's absolutely the right decision, and that's what it's there for. And it prevents you from having any sort of debate of, was it, wasn't it? There's clear picture evidence and a line to show it that it was indeed onside. Not that will stop people having a cry and a moan about it, but that's more on them than on the actual decision itself.
Yeah, it's funny that, because I did think that when you see it on TV and they're cheering and then they're not cheering and then they are cheering, that you might think, that maybe does take the emotion out of it, but it doesn't really. I don't think it takes the initial surge of excitement away, but then you get another surge when it's confirmed and you've still got the goal, so you're happy and you're able to contextualise it in that way. So I didn't think, I would like it to have been a little bit clearer, and maybe I agreed sooner as far as that specific goal is concerned, but I didn't have a problem with the process of the time delay. Absolutely not. One thing VAR did get very wrong was the Aribo penalty shout. How was your view for this? You're up that end of the pitch, if memory serves me right, in the club deck. My view is pretty decent as I'm in the middle. It looked to me at the time like he got tripped as he kind of danced past the defender into the box, and I think it's still a stonewaller after all the replays. How was your view of it, and can you think of any reason why they looked at that multiple times and thought that wasn't a penalty?
You have no idea where I sit. Opposite.
Clearly not, yep.
In club deck, so probably one of the worst views for that particular incident. You hear the shouts and you trust more in the fans that are over in that area in terms of how they are shouting, I think, because they're able to kind of make a better judgment at that moment. You hear at that time they're convinced on it, ergo I'm convinced on it. The fact that VAR doesn't give anything, I have to only assume that there'll be a reason. There's maybe just got the ball first or whatnot. But looking back on it, as I've seen later on, I don't know how they come to that decision with the evidence there. I can only think that they saw the wee sign that the Brondby fans had about VAR and thought, let's not like really piss them off, and that could be the only reason, because there is no reason in my mind to look at that and think there's any reason to not give that penalty.
Yeah, it was a strange one. From that point onwards, arguably a little bit earlier, it was pretty well managed by Rangers, and I thought after the debate about subs last game out against Hearts and whether or not we used the right subs at the right time in terms of changing the game, I think the subs on the night against Brøndby accentuated and gave us something a little bit different on the night. I think that's probably down to having the 5 subs in Europe, James. It makes a bit of a difference there. You're able to bring on Wright, Sakala and Arfield for a bit of pace and energy, but you can also make the sub for injury, as we had to do, and a rotation sub as well. It just gives you that extra flexibility and allows you to either change the game if you want or freshen things up.
Yeah, I think clearly, it was something that they were able to utilise last season. I know the guys had mentioned this on the last podcast, David and Andy, about the 5 subs and how we were able to take really good advantage of that, and I think we did so again in this game, because immediately when they came on, I thought Arfield and Wright were linking up quite well. Arfield had that chance that I think the keeper just tipped onto the bar. That would have been an excellent goal, and I think Arfield showing that level of sharpness, that's quite encouraging in terms of the next kind of run of games. We are able to do that and manage the game in that way. So I think on this occasion you're right. Jared, I think, made mistakes in terms of his use of subs against Hearts, but he absolutely made the right calls for this game.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right that the chances, we'll just round it off there. Arfield and Sakala chances when they come on. Lovely play from Wright down the side to jink past his man. He switches the ball back and Scott Arfield off the bar, arriving late in the box as he's prone to do, and then Sakala, again, wonderful pass by Aribo straight through the middle, and we see Sakala's pace on the break. I actually thought he took a touch too many, first of all, but then when he hit it, I thought he just got himself a little bit too close to the goalkeeper. But looking back on it, James, it's actually a pretty good save by the goalkeeper. I think Sakala probably should still score, but we have to give the goalkeeper credit for it.
I'm not going to, because I just think that Sakala really should finish that. If you look at this chance and compare it with the Real Madrid game, and I know there's a big difference in terms of sort of timescale between the two events, but you think of how Sakala only needed the one touch when running through, and then had the confidence just to smash that in, and it looked very different on this occasion in terms of the way that he was approaching that. His speed is blistering, and he's a really, really great option to come off the bench and in the hope that a circumstance comes up where he could take advantage of a tiring defence. That's exactly the circumstance that he's coming on for in terms of that chance, and yet he wasn't able to take full advantage of it. I think anyone who's wanting to potentially write Sakala off at this stage would be the same people who wrote off John Lundstrom, and look where we are now with him. So I don't think you can do that. You can never really do that as a football fan properly until there's been enough evidence. I don't think we're at that point. There has been enough evidence yet on Sakala. But that speed is something that he will be able to utilise to good effect, especially in domestic games, and it will come, and there'll be a few occasions where he'll take advantage of great balls like Aribo's ball there, and run through and score goals, and he'll suddenly then feel like he won't need to take as many touches, because he'll have that confidence to be able to dispatch those chances.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. The manager said, as we come on to St Mirren here, the manager said that it looks like Ryan Kent won't make the St Mirren game, and maybe Aberdeen will come too early, so it'll be interesting to see if Sakala gets a little bit more minutes. As we said, getting a wee bit of pace into the team in certain games would be interesting. But let's look ahead then to St Mirren. James Gerrard spoke to the media today, Friday morning, as we're recording, and said it's possible that Balogun won't play in the game. He's still waiting on a scan, so timescales are pretty tight for that. As I said, comes too soon for Ryan Kent, and it comes too soon for Ryan Jack, although he is back in full training and should be available in a couple of weeks. We have been here before, I think, so we'll temper that excitement a little bit, but looking good if we can get him back by the middle of next month, maybe after the international break. That would be a positive and give us another option in midfield. We've got a midweek game coming up against Aberdeen as well, James, so maybe there's an opportunity to give minutes to some of the other players. Who would you see coming into contention for this St Mirren game on Sunday?
Potentially Arfield, in that kind of attacking midfield role. If the manager's kind of sort of brought him into the Brondby game and seen what he's done off the back of that, there's every chance that could be the case. I'm really interested in terms of what he does in the front line. I wonder, for me, I think he should put Morelos on the bench for this one, and I would like to see Roof play more centrally. If you then wanted to bring Arfield in, I think you could then push Aribo up, and that would work fine as a front three of Hagi, Aribo and Roof. I also wonder whether this is a game where you could just keep Nathan Patterson, just that kind of level of sharpness. As much as Tav did play well, Patterson, I think, will benefit from kind of playing every now and again rather than just having long spells of not getting the chance to. And given the fact we have Sunday then Wednesday, wouldn't be the worst idea in the world in my mind. And what he does at centre back, as I say, as I alluded to before, would be really interesting to see. But yeah, I think without Ryan Kent there, had Kent been just about ready, then yeah, I think you bring him back, you bring him into a game like this, and obviously Glenn Kamara will come back in as well, and I would imagine that would be for Davis. So yeah, the front line will be the one that's most interesting, because I think that will cause the most debate between fans between now and then. That's what I would go with in terms of that front line. If we don't have Kent back, then I know some people might say about Scott Wright. I just think right now he's much better as that player that comes off the bench rather than starting games. It maybe leaves us slightly slow up front, that lineup. I get it, but I think it's just about how you use that, and someone like Arfield can be quite important for that to then offer that balance.
Yeah, the only thing I would pick out there was the Patterson thing. I think that this is an ideal game for Patterson to play. The only thing that is making me think twice about it is if Tavernier, as we thought last night, is getting a little bit of form back, it would be very Gerrard to let him play. Tavernier is a bit of a streaky player, and he can go through these little runs if this is something happening where he's getting back up to close to the levels that we know he can be. Maybe he might not want to ruin that. Maybe not, and he might offload him, and we've still got Aberdeen to come, Motherwell the week after, and then obviously a huge European game against Brøndby. So there's plenty of time. He might pick this game as one that he thinks he could just offload him again and make sure he's fit and firing. I'm not sure, but I was of the opinion I would like to see Patterson, but not sure what the manager will do based on the performance last night. But we'll see. Just incidentally, there was a video came out today, Sky Sports, James Tavernier and Marvin Bartley, who's the Livingston assistant manager, speaking as part of Sky Sports' Kick It Out campaign, which is aiming to tackle racism and discrimination. And Tavernier has opened up on some of the racist abuse that he has received. Obviously, Martin Bartley is the Equality and Diversity Advisor, and
is very vocal on this subject, and I don't think he that's the case because that's his role. I think it's something he firmly believes in. He's spoken out and stuff like this before, and actually I think whenever he speaks about it, he comes across so well, and is so coherent, and you can't help but just kind of admire the way that he kind of goes about his business as a professional and as a person in terms of this kind of subject. So I think I think that for people that will maybe be watching the game on the TV on the Sunday, I think that is going to be part of the kind of build up to it. It's still something that goes on, and in terms of this kind of thing, you see it on a kind of weekly basis, and there's stories of some clubs saying that a player has been subject to racist abuse. So I think it's important that we see guys sort of talking about what the impact it has, and they talk about that Livingston game and how Rangers fans kind of helped with that message when taking the knee and the response to it, and how it was really, really important in that respect. So no, it's good to hear, and I'm sure the full thing would be really, really kind of interesting to watch and hear what the guys have to say on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. He did say, as you mentioned there, very vocal in terms of the racism that has been unfortunately a big part of this season and last season. He does go on to say how moved he was the opening game of the season, James, the first game of the season with fans in the stand, and when the players went to take a knee, he was he says he'll never understand how much it meant to him to hear the Rangers fans clapping when he took the knee. So I think it's a really important subject, and you're right, he speaks well, and we'd encourage everyone to go and watch that video and support the campaign. Okay, so back to St Mirren then, James. They're a pretty good run, actually. They weren't doing so well earlier in the season, but they've now got 11 points from their last 5 games, which is the same as us and Dundee United, I think it is. Best form in the league. They're also unbeaten in the last 6 games, and they've won their last 3. We do tend to have a little bit of a struggle away in Paisley. Obviously, we went out the League Cup there last year, and there's been a few sticky games recently. What type of game are you expecting? Are you expecting more of the same, or are we going to continue with the relatively good vein of form in terms of creating chances over the last couple of games?
I really hope that there is, we have that muscle memory of how we've started the last couple of games, and continue and really start off with that foot on the throat type play, and keep the ball, spread the play, move around really, really easily, because the thing with St Mirren and the way that Jim Goodwin manages the team, they will have spells where they will be attacking our goal. So we need to make sure that when that happens, it's going to be later on in the game, and by that point we're in a comfortable position where we don't have that fear, and there's not that nervousness that comes with trying to defend that. I'm confident in the players to go and start the game well. Set precedent, whether that includes a couple of goals or not, that's the hope, and that's why I think you need to have informed attackers starting in that front line. So there will probably be times where it will be a bit more uncomfortable, but I think in the main, if we continue to show that level of form, then we should be absolutely fine in terms of getting the result.
Yeah, he's doing a good job there, Jim Goodwin. That game last year, obviously we lost, which was a bit of a rarity for us last year, but we weren't good on the night. But that's probably the best that anyone played against us domestically last year. I thought they were fantastic. We always tend to focus on how we did, but I thought they're fantastic. And I'm not sure how long he's been there now, but he's certainly had a good couple of seasons to be able to build, and he keeps adding experience and talent as well. I think he's doing very well for St Mirren, and I'm expecting a really difficult game again. Fingers crossed we can get through it. Like we said, we've got a very, very busy month coming up, and we just need to get through these games and see where we are by the next international break. Really. James, can I trouble you for a prediction for this one?
I will happily take a 2-0 win from this game, and that is what I'm going to go with. And I think he's due it. So a wee Joe Rebo cutting in from the right with a left foot curler to be one of the goals.
Yeah, absolutely is due it. I'm going to go for a 2-0 myself. I don't quite think this is the game Morelos is going to get his 100th. Personally, I think that's possibly going to be against Aberdeen midweek for no reason other than he does enjoy a goal against Aberdeen. So that's what I'll go with. But yeah, I think I agree with what you've said there. Absolutely. Okay, James, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure, Adam. Thank you.
And we'll be back next week. Thank you all for listening.